So now that we've gone over taxonomy, both the domains and the kingdoms, we are going to shift gears. The last part of chapter one that we need to go over is what's called the scientific method. The scientific method is a systematic approach to understanding the natural world, based on evidence and testable hypotheses. We're going to go over what hypotheses are in a second. What you need to know about the scientific method is this is how we understand the world around us. What happened, what's going on, what's the explanation for the events around us. For this content page, I want you to make sure you know why the scientific method is important and know each step in order. Be able to describe each step of this process. And to start off, we're going to go over why is the scientific method important. So like I stated earlier, the scientific method is a systematic approach to understanding the natural world based on evidence and testable hypotheses. It's the way we know the world around us. The reason this is so important to us, so important to the world, is because with the scientific method, that is how we've learned so much. That's how we know what cells are. That's how we know what atoms are and what they're made of. That's how we know whales can live in the ocean and grow so big. They're the biggest organism in the world ever. This is how we know what bacteria and viruses are and how they make us sick, but also how to defend against them. Through the scientific method, science has made antibacterial medicine, antiviral medicine, vaccines, and so much more. A lot of the things around you, your phone, your car, your bed, everything around you was made through the scientific method, either a very complicated way, such as vaccines, or something more simple. But everything we know around us is made using the scientific method. Everything in our textbook was determined using the scientific method. So without it, we wouldn't be able to grow and develop as a civilization. And remember, the scientific method is just a way to understand the world around us. It's a very structured way of doing so. And with that being said, let's go over the steps. Now, to make things simple, I grouped these steps into 4. Each one of these 4 steps can really be split into 2. We're going to go over each one individually, though, with an example. Step 1 is make an observation and ask a question. A simple start. For making an observation, we use our senses, our sight, hearing, smell, taste, and touch to observe the world. And through those observations, we can start noticing things. We can start noticing interactions, noticing processes that occur around us. From those observations, though, that's where we can start asking questions. So that's kind of the break for step 1, between the 2 parts. We are making observations of the world around us. And from that, we ask a question. As a very simple question. You can think of, why do I need coffee in the morning? For me, I drink coffee every single morning. I need it every morning to function. So an observation that I've had is when I don't have my coffee in the morning, I feel more tired throughout the day. It's harder to get through the day. And that's just an observation. I've noticed that. I notice on days without my coffee, I get more tired and it's harder to get through the day. With that observation and with that question, now we go into our hypothesis and prediction. A hypothesis is a temporary explanation of one or more observations. So it's a temporary way of explaining what's going on in the world around us. A hypothesis must be testable. You must be able to test if a hypothesis is true or not. And that is done by collecting evidence for or against it. But with a hypothesis, you can make a prediction, which is a statement of what you think will happen. And this again, step 2 can be broken down into the hypothesis, the temporary explanation to our question, and a prediction of what do we think will happen. So again, our observation was without my coffee, I feel more tired. My question could be like, do I need coffee in the morning to feel awake? Our hypothesis then, remember our explanation, is having coffee in the morning helps you stay awake during the day. And my prediction based off that is if I don't have coffee in the morning, then I would feel more tired during the day. So notice how my hypothesis is an explanation. It's a testable temporary explanation. Coffee helps me stay awake during the day. My prediction is a statement of what will happen. If I don't have coffee in the morning, I'll be more tired. Now we move on to step 3. Design an experiment and collect and interpret data. So once we have a hypothesis, once we have a prediction, it's time to actually test it. And we do that through an experiment, which is a procedure carried out under controlled conditions to test a hypothesis and prediction. So we need a way to test, is my hypothesis and is my prediction true or not? Once the experiment is conducted, it's time to collect and interpret the data. All experiments need to collect data or measurements to be able to effectively test to see if hypothesis and predictions are correct. If we go with the coffee example, if I wanted to test if by drinking coffee in the morning, I could have more days where I drink coffee in the morning and days where I don't. And this is an experiment. We have two types of days, two groups. Days where I drink coffee and days where I don't drink coffee. Now, on each of those days, I collect data. And in this case, my data is how tired am I throughout the day? How tired am I in the beginning of the day? How tired am I 2 hours later? Then how tired am I 2 hours after that? And so forth. That way I can see on days when I have coffee, how is my level of tiredness changing? On days when I don't have coffee, how is my level of tiredness not changing? How is it changing? So in this experiment, we have two groups. Days I have coffee and days where I don't. And we see how tired am I on throughout each of those days. And we do this multiple times. We don't just do one day without coffee or one day with. We do multiple days without coffee and multiple days with coffee. Now, the last part of the scientific method is analysis or drawing conclusions in the peer review process. Once we have all the data, once we get everything together, all that information, it can now be analyzed. This means that the investigator, the researcher, the scientist can take the data and determine if the hypothesis is supported or denied. This closes the loop to the scientific method, but it's not the last part. So after collecting data, we can go back to our hypothesis and see, is it right or is it correct saying that having coffee in the morning helps them stay awake? After doing the experiment and collecting data, we should be able to answer this, seeing if it's yet supported or denied, seeing if it's true or false. Once that analysis is over, though, then scientists will commonly write a paper out about the experiments, the results, and the analysis. And they publish it in what's called scientific journals. Some of you may have heard of some of these scientific journals. A big one within biology is called Nature. This is where scientists will write out their whole experiment, their results, their analysis, their findings, publish it so other scientists can read it. This allows their findings to go through what's called peer review, or the process of other scientists looking over the study to determine if it's a valid study. What I mean by a valid study is other scientists will look at the experiment, look at all the results to determine are they drawing the same conclusion? Is there anything wrong with the experiment? Is this a worthwhile experiment? Did they get enough data and so forth? This peer review process is kind of like a filter where the experiment kind of has to go through this filtering process to see, is it an effective experiment and does it effectively answer the hypothesis. So an example, going back to our coffee example, say the data I gather shows that I do feel more tired throughout the day when I have coffee in the morning. That would suggest that if I don't have coffee in the morning, then I will be more tired. So that would support my hypothesis and prediction that having coffee in the morning helps me stay awake. And if I don't have coffee in the morning, I would feel more tired. So that's the analysis and conclusion part. So to go over this again in very like more manageable chunks. Step one is make an observation and ask a question. Look at the world around you, use your senses to make an observation, and ask a question about something going on in the environment around you. Your hypothesis and prediction, step two, is trying to explain that observation, that question. That hypothesis is the temporary explanation, and the prediction is the statement of what you think will happen. Then we move on to step three, design an experiment and collect and interpret data. After having a hypothesis and prediction, then you want to make an experiment to start gathering that data. Start having different groups, start forming some type of way to see, is your hypothesis correct? Is your prediction correct or not? And lastly, step four, analysis or drawing conclusions in the peer review process. Once you have all the data, you want to analyze it, you want to see what conclusions you have, and see, does it support or deny the hypothesis and prediction? And once you draw that conclusion, you write out the experiment, you write out the results and the conclusion, and you go through the peer review process to share your findings with the world. This figure down here breaks up the steps. What I did is I grouped the steps together. Step one, which can be 2 parts. Step two, also 2 parts. Step three, again 2 parts. And step four, 2 parts. You'll notice there's some additional things like consulting prior knowledge here. These are additional steps that you can add into the scientific method. For now, again, keep it simple. 4 steps, each can be broken down to two additional. And lastly, here are some additional resources that I want you to look at. These are both very simple examples of using the scientific method in real life. Very simple where you can see the scientific method being used, the parts, the steps of it, and how something went through the peer review process. So just wrap up this content page. Make sure you understand why the scientific method is important, and make sure you know each step in its order.